And we're going to welcome our speakers up tonight. And we have Heather Brown, and she's the Operations and Training Director for the Eastern Shore Psychological Services, and Corporal Matt Brown from Fruitland Police Department. So welcome.
I'm Heather Brown. I'm with Eastern Shore Psychological Services. We were honored to be asked tonight to come and talk about compassion fatigue, specifically with our first responders. We, as a family, live this on a personal basis. My husband, Corporal Matt Brown, who you'll be hearing from in a little while, will also be speaking. And lately what we've been doing is going around talking about different things that happen while being a first responder, because we don't realize after a period of time how things build up and then what happens afterwards. One of the things that we try to do together when we're speaking is talk about how things happen in our lives, whether it be our home, whether it be our health, which includes our mental and our physical health, our community, who our supports are, and then what our purpose is in life. So we need to go through this, and we only have a half hour. We usually talk a lot longer, so it's good you guys are eating, and hopefully we'll enjoy this and we'll be done with in a short period of time. But anyway, what we want to talk about first is compassion fatigue. If you guys are familiar with it as a first responder, you get into this line of work and you're doing it because you want to help people, and that's the whole goal. And that doesn't go away during your career. However, what happens is over time you start to respond to a number of different things that occur, and they're tragedies, and you see these tragedies on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and they build up over time. The other frustration that happens is that you have these systems in place, and you think these systems are supposed to come in and help individuals and help them get to the places that they're supposed to get. And when we come and we find out that systems are broken, it kind of hinders us even more. And the hardest part that I've seen with first responders is you don't necessarily get to see the positive outcomes that I, as a clinician, may get to see, or family members may get to see. You only get to see the worst situations and individuals at their worst. So it's nice to have a night like this to honor those who are moving forward, who are making a difference, and that includes everybody in this room, because you all play a big part of that in helping others. However, that tends to wear you down. And what we talk about a lot of times is, Matt and I have learned, we've been married for 16 years, and it's taken us 16 years to kind of get this first responder thing under control and what happens when you're married to a first responder, because it's not always the easiest thing in the world. I might not be that easy to be married to either, but for right now, we're talking about him. But what happens is and Matt will give some personal experiences himself, but as a family, we see it when he comes home. We see the tiredness. We see the heartache. As a first responder, you might be out there, you're trying to help, you're seeing the same things over and over again, and you're getting frustrated and you're getting tired. And you find that happens more often, and you get cynical and you get angry because every time you try to help somebody or get somebody somewhere to get the help, you might hit a barrier. And that doesn't just go away. That doesn't just stay at the job. That comes home with you. And so what we've tried to do is look at things in a different way. For Matt, much of what our marriage first started to be like was him coming home and isolating a lot. So it's easier for him maybe not to talk to us, or he didn't know how to talk to us. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know how to explain what he had been through or what he had saw. And so it was very hard for him to open up. And as that starts to progress, he also closes off and changes his friendships. So not only does his friendships change, my friendships change, because we don't go out and socialize. Because you guys know, sitting in this room, if you go out to a restaurant, where do you sit? With your back up against the wall, right? So after 16 years of marriage, I know not to go to a restaurant and pick a seat. I just know, because he's going to tell me where I'm going to sit because he's going to be comfortable. My daughter and I, who is now 16, lucky us, she is a wonderful girl, but she's 16. decided one day at the food court that she was going to pick where we were going to sit. And of course, Megan chooses right smack in the middle of the food court, you know, where everybody's sitting around. And I'm like, honey, we can't sit here. And she's like, why? I'm like, Daddy's not going to be comfortable. And she's like, ugh, you know, like 16-year-olds do. And so we ended up going all the way over to the other side where nobody was sitting. You know, the Chinese place is closed now. So again, it's very empty. And we sat over there. But again, what his life becomes our life. And we adjust to it. And we make those adjustments. But I think the hardest part for us, and one of the things when we were asked to speak, was thinking about how this opiate epidemic has affected him. Because he's out there, he's trying to help. He's come a long way in quite a few years from being that.
She's trained me.
Well, I haven't trained him, but he's listened a little bit more. But he's not that, you know, let me go take them and lock them up and it's done and over. He's starting to find that compassion that he used to have when he first started. However, sometimes when you find that compassion, it can really open up some old wounds, and it can open up some feelings that you may not want to have. And so that can be very difficult at times, because being and working in this field, you have to learn how to desensitize yourself to certain situations that you're seeing on a regular basis. And if you don't desensitize yourself, those emotions become very overwhelming. Matt is getting better. He's able to come home and we're able to talk, or we're able to recognize one another and say, hey, tonight's not a good night. You know, let me take the kids and go a different direction just to give him a few minutes to get his uniform off and get something to eat. You know, because the kids miss him too, right? You guys are gone on these shifts and, you know, it's just us and the kids, and then I'm ready just to give him the kids because after 12 hours of being with the kids, you know, we're done too. But we recognize that he needs a few minutes. There was one night he came home, and it's been in the past year, and it was the worst night that I've seen that he came home. And it had to do with somebody who had overdosed. And he took a lot of responsibility in trying to help that person, because he felt like he was the last connection for that person to have closure on a very terrible situation. And, you know, to me, it recognized that there's still so much inside that is just shoved down that doesn't ever come up. But sometimes when it does come up, it comes up as the wrong thing. You know, when we're driving, you know, it's not the most fun thing to do is riding in the passenger seat when he's driving. You know, it's like, I always say it's like Clark W. Griswold on, you know, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, you know, the very first scene where he's driving and he's flicking people off and you stop it. That's what it's like riding with him. You know,
She lies.
or you get the reports from the kids, Mommy, Daddy got pulled over again. So, you know, but that's the way he is able to let out his frustration, you know. And I rather him let it out that way sometimes than out other ways. Even though, and for some of you that are in here, you've heard our Instant Pot story, right? Our Instant Pot, we're supposed to be able to cook instantly, correct, right? That's the purpose of it. Our dinner took about 60 minutes with an Instant Pot to cook, because Matt got frustrated, and he wasn't frustrated necessarily at me, but he was taking it out of the Instant Pot. So we had this little go back and forth. He's like, no, you gotta fill it up with water, and you've gotta fill it up this high, and it has to have liquid, and then you turn it on and it wouldn't work. I'm like, are you sure it really needs that much? Yes, that's what it needs. And so we kept going back and forth.
It wasn't about the Instant Pot at all.
It wasn't about the Instant Pot.
Yeah.
It wasn't. But guess who was right? I was right. So, but the point is that, you know, things come out at different times, and if you don't start to take aware of what is going on and what is going on internally, and just take a moment and say, wow, is it really worth getting upset over this? I have to make that choice. Is it worth separating myself from my family? I have to make that choice, because some of these things that you go through does put that separation between you and your family, or you and your friends, or even you and yourself. You know, we're losing first responders at a crazy number. Just since January, you know, our police officers are at 58 for suicide. We're losing ourselves. We're burning ourselves out. We're getting to this point where we give and give and give to the point we don't even have the ability to give to ourselves anymore. And so it's important, as we've tried to work through different things, to figure out what that is to get that special meaning back in your life. You know, it's only been the past 3 years that I can honestly say that we've probably been the happiest, because he's been able to find things to replace some old stuff in his life. And he'll explain that in a little while. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. I want you to hear from him.
Is this one on? So,
Yeah, I
yeah.
guess.
We'll sit this one down. I actually wanted to take a little bit of a different track tonight and talk about some stuff that happened in my career. And I'm not as polished a public speaker as my wife is, so I'm going to read a little bit. But I became a police officer way back in 1989, and I started with the sheriff's department. In those days, crack cocaine, when that was the big thing around Wicomico County, and a lot of you guys have been around for a while, you remember that. Crack cocaine was everywhere, and we had open-air drug markets all over the county. And when I started, of course, you know, you would have had to pay me to go home. You know, I didn't want to. I would have worked 24/7 if you'd have let me. And you know, any chance we got, we were in one of those open-air drug markets trying to get a drug arrest. You know, I grew up in a home where there was pretty strict religious environment. You know, and always knowing that I was going to be a cop, I stayed away from drugs and alcohol. So when I got out there, that was my first exposure to drugs, and being around people that were using drugs. And for me, back in those days, things were pretty black and white. You know, if you used drugs, if you did bad things and broke the law, you were a bad guy. And if not, then you were one of us, the good guys, right? And of course, you know, that's how all drug users fit in my world, which was right or wrong, right? As a 30-year veteran of this job, you know, I know how frustrated it gets to go out here and see the same people over and over again, time after time, another overdose, another arrest, the same faces, the same people. It gets pretty frustrating. And I know that it's pretty easy sometimes as a first responder, as a police officer, as the guys on the ambulance, to get to that point where it's easier to just stop caring about the jobs that we have to do on a regular basis than it is to care. And that's just the natural way that we protect ourselves when we're doing our jobs. And they now have a name for that, as they, you know, everything has a name these days, and it's called compassion fatigue. And, you know, in preparing for this, you know, I thought about some things that had happened in my past that taught me some lessons about compassion fatigue. And, about 1992, I was hired by the Fruitland Police Department and asked to go undercover, and I did, and I was undercover for approximately 5 years. And I worked in Wicomico and Somerset and Dorchester counties in an undercover capacity. It was a pretty cool time. I had the opportunity to work with some really great people, and of course, you know, we utilized informants at the task force, and I'd never really been around drug users and drug sellers except to lock them up at that point in time in my career. And you know, I found it's pretty easy to pass judgment on people when you don't actually know people. You know, if you it's easy to judge somebody from a particular segment of society when you've never had anything to do with that particular part of society. The informants that we used, of course, some of them were not very nice people, but a lot of them were decent people. A lot of them were just everyday people who had made a bad choice at one time or another, or who'd gotten hooked up in drug use, or they'd gotten lost a little bit along the way, and they found themselves somewhere where they didn't expect to be. A lot of them were decent people. I didn't know that before I started working undercover. I worked a lot with a state trooper whose name was Alan McLeod, and he was a good guy, a really good undercover officer, and a really good friend. And we got into a heroin ring here in Wicomico County, and actually ended up extending all the way up to Baltimore by the time we got done. And it was about 30, 40 individuals, most of who became addicts through legitimate means. You know, they were pain consumers. And we made an arrest of a couple of guys on the outskirts of this ring of heroin users and dealers, and we had convinced one of the guys to introduce us to his dealer. So we went to his house where he was going to do the introduction, and we were sitting around talking, waiting for the guy to show up. And of course, you know, drug dealers never show up when they say they're gonna. So we ended up spending a significant amount of time with these folks, and was sitting there talking to the roommate. And these guys have been friends for a long time. They were friends since they were in high school, and they worked at similar jobs. And the roommate had found himself diagnosed with a incurable and very painful terminal illness. And as a result, he was hospitalized for a significant amount of time, and in the hospital he became addicted to morphine. Of course, when you're that ill, you can't keep a job, so he lost his job. And then he lost his insurance, and then he lost his ability to get morphine, and he found himself out on the street. His friend, being a good friend, moved him into a bedroom in his house. And having no other means to get any kind of pain medication, he started going out and buying heroin for his friend. And as we sat and talked, I learned that the guy we'd locked up had never used drugs for a day in his life. Not once had he ever used drugs. But that was the only way he knew to ease his friend's suffering. And he was just like me. It's what I would have done for a friend. I would have done anything I could to ease his suffering. And I found out on that day that it was easy to pass judgment and sit in judgment of these folks when I didn't really know anything about it. And as I sat there for a few minutes, I felt a little bit of shame, not at doing my job, but because of how judgmental I'd been. This guy wasn't really any different than me. A short time later, I found myself actually on the bypass. I was riding back from a job down in Somerset County, and I was working with an informant that I really actually kind of thought a lot about. He was a good guy. He had the gift of gab, and he could talk his way out of any circumstance or any trouble. And he'd saved my butt on more than one occasion with his gift of gab. And he got himself in a little trouble. He was trying to work off some charges. He was doing some work, and he did some really good work with us. And we were in a ring down in Somerset County of cocaine dealers, and we did a lot of good. And Bobby was quiet one night on the way home, and it was unusual for him. So I said, "Hey, Bobby, what's up?" And he said, "You know, I was just thinking about all I could have had and done in my life if I hadn't spent all my money on drugs." And he went on to tell me that he'd gotten hooked on cocaine after his wife had started using, and he'd go to these parties with his wife, and he wouldn't have any fun because everybody else there was either drunk or high, and he was the only one that wasn't. So he started using cocaine so he could keep up because he was afraid he was going to lose her. And he got addicted. He worked at a construction job. He would go away every couple of weeks or two. He'd come back with anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 in his pocket some Friday nights. And a couple hours after he'd get home, his wife and him would make a trip down to one of the open-air drug markets, and they'd buy a little cocaine. And they'd swear to each other that would be the only trip that they'd make. That was going to be the last trip, last time. And then the drugs would wear off. They'd make one more trip, and so on and so forth until Monday rolled around and the money was gone, and they snorted cocaine all weekend long. And it was time for Bobby to go back to work, and it would start all over again. I said, "You know, Bobby, how come you just, you didn't quit? How come you didn't go find some help?" And he thought about it for a minute, and I'll never forget what he said because, it kind of changed my perspective. He said, "I did quit. I quit about 1,000 times. I found that so immensely sad that I didn't really know what to say. So I asked him the next question. I said, "What's different? What's different now for you?" And he was looking out the window and he said, "I don't know, man. I guess it finally took." I've arrested and talked to a lot of drug users over the years, and you know, we personally, I've never met an addict that didn't really, in the deep down recesses of their soul, want to get clean. Although I've met a lot that weren't ready to get clean. My point is, you just never know why or how somebody arrives at being an addict. You never know the backstory unless you take time to know. What you find out might surprise you. We as first responders have some pretty strong thoughts about addiction. And I'm not really here to debate whether it's a disease or whether it's a choice. You know, personally, I've always kind of felt that it fits somewhere in between. The fact of the matter is, I don't really care. You know, all I know is that it's tearing at the very fabric of our society on a daily basis. And I've seen it personally take children away from parents, and parents away from kids, and husbands away from wives. And I can't think of anything worse than that. I said all that just to make a couple easy points. First of all, you never know what impact a few moments of compassion might have in an individual's life. This might be the time. It might be the time that they finally have it in them to quit. It might be the time that they are there, they've hit the bottom, and they want to be lifted back up. It might be the time that it finally takes. And I've seen it happen, so I know that it can. Secondly, compassion fatigue is one of those things that happens to all of us that do these jobs on a regular basis. It's just bound to happen. It's the mind's natural means of coping with all the bad things that we have to see and do in our daily duties. And let's face it, it's not much fun to stand over the Excuse me. It's not much fun to stand over the body of a young man that you've been arresting since he was a teenager. And you think that maybe just finally, this time, maybe, he finally got it. And then you realize he didn't. And mom shows up and she's walking down the sidewalk, and you don't want her to see, so you meet her out front. And you know she already knows, but she asks the question anyway, and she says, "What's going on?" And you say, the drugs finally got him. The drugs finally took your son. And then you hold her as she cries and her heart breaks one more time. I know how that feels, and it doesn't feel good. But I can also tell you this. If you close yourself off to being that instrument of change in somebody's life, the person that ultimately is going to pay the most, the person that's going to be hurt the most is yourself. We have to do these jobs on a daily basis with whatever compassion that we can muster, for the reasons that I've just told you. I want to thank everybody for your time tonight. I want to say how much I appreciate those of you that are being honored here today. These aren't easy jobs that we do on a regular basis. And, you know, let this be a reminder that there are people out here who appreciate the things that we do on a daily basis. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you again very much for that great presentation. I think they hit a lot of points at home. We all work with it every day. I know most of you in the room, but I'm David Fitzgerald. I work for Wicomico County Department of Emergency Services, the Emergency Management Coordinator and Risk Manager, and one of our duties that we've joined in opioid crisis with emergency management with the opioid intervention teams. So I do the operations chief, and Chrissy Bowie Simpson is our opioid coordinator for the county. So her and I work very closely. We have many members of the opioid intervention team in the room. We're going to recognize a lot of those agencies tonight and thank them for what they do, and thank all of you for what you do. So we'd like to ask Lori Brewster, our health officer, to come forward, and David Shipley, our emergency services director for Wicomico County, and assist us with these presentations.
Award. So up first, we have the Del Mar Police Department. We have the Fruitland Police Department.
They got just.
The Maryland Natural Resource Police. The Maryland State Police, Barrack E. Pittsville Police Department.
Saw anybody here?
PRMC Police. City of Salisbury Police Department. Salisbury University Police. The Wicomico County Sheriff's Office. And the Wicomico County Narcotics Task Force. All right, up next we have Fire and EMS. So Fruitland Volunteer Fire Department. The Del Mar Volunteer Fire Department. Hebron Volunteer Fire Department. Parsonsburg Volunteer Fire Department. Pittsville Volunteer Fire Department. The Willards Volunteer Fire Department. Mardellis Springs Volunteer Fire Department. Powellville Volunteer Fire Department.
Thank you, Rich.
You're busy.
The West Side Volunteer Fire Department. Sharptown Volunteer Fire Department. The Allen Volunteer Fire Department. And the Salisbury Fire Department. In addition to the local police departments as well as the fire departments, we have a couple additional agency recognitions that we would like to present. The first one is for the PRMC Emergency Department. And also the Wicomico County Department of Emergency Services, the 911 Division.
First, I want to tell you a little bit about my story. What? Oh, I'm right on it. I have a son who is 25 years old. We've been dealing with addiction for almost 10 years now. When we started out, I had no clue of where to go, who to turn to, what we had to do. I didn't find out he was using until I got my first overdose phone call, which was in Delmar.
Turn this down so you can see you a little better.
Okay. And with that phone call is when the road started in 2013 for us, with knowing that it was heroin. I always thought it was just marijuana. After that, things kind of got rocky for us. Jerry had been arrested in 2015. And I knew he had a warrant out for his arrest, and he was at my home. So I had to actually call them and tell them that he was there. In doing so, I begged him, please don't break my door down. I'm on my way. So I left work, and when I get there, there's 2 officers there. One of them, I don't know his name. I couldn't tell you who he was. But the other one was Aaron Holler. He assured me that things would be okay. So that day, as my son was being taken away for the first time, as a mom, I was scared. Aaron didn't stop there. He continued to contact us. Actually, the very next day, he contacted my son saying, what can I do to help you? What can I do to get you right? Since 2015, Aaron has been in constant contact with us. He's Facebooked, he's texted, he's called. He's been in constant with us because of what they were saying earlier, his compassion. It wasn't just a job for him. He saw a young man who needed help. I wish I could have said 2015 was it for us, but it wasn't. 26 rehabs, 5 overdoses, 3 times incarcerated. My son is 10 months clean. And because of Aaron and the way he treated us as people, I didn't lose hope. I knew that my son was going to come out of it. Jerry wasn't able to be here, but he sent me something. He said, he wanted me to read this. He said, Aaron, thanks for seeing the slightest beam of light in me. That day that they locked me up, and for knowing that there was still some hope and not giving up on me. I appreciate you, Aaron, for staying in touch with every one of us through this process and to try to help others in this position that you are in. I will always look up to you and be thankful for the people like you in this area. For the other first responders, we've had, like I said, 5 overdoses. He wanted me to say, thanks to all the responders for being there. It's not easy. It's not easy for any of us. You guys get to go home, but I still had to see it for 7 years. You guys, when you went home and took your uniforms off, that was it. but I had to see it for 7 years. Aaron, I pray that we have more men like you in uniform. Because of you and because of your compassion and because of how you looked after us, you pushed me to be like you. And because of you and because of others like you, I do what I do now. And I can't thank you enough for seeing something in my son that nobody else did. Aaron, can you come on up here, please?
Aaron, Mr. Culver has a county recognition plaque for you. And we again thank you for all that you do for Wicomico County and the residents and during our crisis and every day protecting our community.
At this point in the evening, we are going to move forward to a couple individual recognitions of individuals. The first one I would like to start is actually going to be Captain Chris Truitt. Chris Truitt is receiving recognition due to his consistent activity in the local opioid intervention team and his participation in sharing overdose data with the team. Chris's efforts and involvement provide important information that aids in addressing this crisis, and the county is extremely grateful for his efforts. The next award goes to First Sergeant Jessica Murphy. Jessica Murphy is receiving recognition for her active participation and collaboration with community partners. Jessica attends various opioid-related meetings, including the county's local overdose fatality review team and opioid intervention team, where she provides valuable information and feedback. Jessica also oversees the COAT deputies and has made contact with numerous individuals who struggle with addiction. Her caring nature, empathy, and compassion for those struggling with addiction does not go unnoticed, and for these reasons, she's receiving this award of a recognition. The next individual was a personal nominee, and I'm just going to read a little bit about what was said. DFC Heath is receiving recognition for going above and beyond by offering additional support and assistance to individuals struggling with addiction and doing so while remaining non-judgmental and empathetic. The person who nominated DFC Heath shared the following. He was very understanding, compassionate, and empathetic towards the people we met with in need of help. He began keeping brochures in his vehicle, so when we made stops while working, he could give those in need a number to call for help. When I would continue to work with individuals, there were several instances where the clients would tell me that he has such empathy for those struggling with addiction. I nominated Deputy First Class Heath, as I feel he makes a difference in this epidemic we are facing and a difference in how the community views law enforcement. The final award goes to Deputy First Class Goldberg. He's receiving recognition this evening due to the support, patience, and encouragement he provides to those struggling with addiction in our community. The person who nominated Deputy First Class Goldberg said the following. While out on a ride-along with Deputy First Class Goldberg, he was approached by an individual who wanted to thank him for always being respectful in the past, even when she wasn't. She was able to share with him that she was drug-free and has a great new job. Goldberg congratulated her and provided her with the support and encouragement that those in recovery need. The person who nominated Deputy Goldberg shared that she will never look at officers the same again because of who he is and how he wears his badge.
Thank you.
supposed to be here.
Thank you all. Up next, we do have another guest speaker, Miss Clary Hendricks. She's here to share a little of her story and express gratitude for the first responders in the room.
Hello, everyone. My name is Clary Hendricks, and I am an opioid overdose survivor. I want to give you a little bit of background on me. My addiction really came into play as a direct result of being a subject of childhood abuse. I suffered many traumas as a young girl and sought drugs to numb all that out. So I am no veteran to drug use. I struggled for many, many, many years. In the early part of 2016, after coming home from jail in 2015, I had a short relapse, and I could basically hear God telling me that I needed to get clean or I was going to die. I went to treatment, got clean, got pregnant. The day I celebrated 9 months clean, that time around, I suddenly lost the father of my unborn child to a sudden heart attack in the middle of the night. I was 32 weeks pregnant. That pregnancy went on without a relapse. My child was born clean. But I'm also a member of a 12-step program that has taught me a different way of life. I abandoned that program. I abandoned God. I abandoned everything that had helped me stay clean up until that point. In early 2017, a week and a half before celebrating a year clean, I chose to pick up substances again because I could not cope with life. It'll be 2 years, April 11th, that I suffered my overdose, my one and only overdose. My baby girl was in the room, not even 4 months old. And my 17-year-old son found me unresponsive and gave me CPR for almost 20 minutes until first responders arrived. I came out of that overdose with a passion for life that, thank God, has never left me. I will be celebrating 2 years clean on April 21st this year. Since that time, I moved into a recovery house for women and children. I completed an IOP program. I obtained my high school diploma. I went back to college, first semester 4.0 GPA. I acquired a job at one of our local organizations where I have been employed for over a year and a half. I work daily with addicts who are still struggling. I work with the homeless. I work with my people. God has given me an opportunity, along with the first responders that were there that night, to save my life. A lot of people tell me I can't imagine living your life, living your story, battling with addiction. I can't imagine being a first responder, showing up to so many overdoses, so many repeated overdoses, so many DOAs. I can only imagine how hope could possibly be lost. This is a crisis going on in our community, but it's something that can be won. And thanks to all of you, we are making headway. I can't begin to show my appreciation through words, really I can't, but what I plan on doing is every day of my life making the best of it and making a difference in our community as well. So there are a couple more awards tonight to give out. Those awards are going to be going to, first of all, Jen Larimore.
Go, Jen. Billy Ayresman.
I'm sorry, Ayresman, I apologize. Thank you, everyone, once again.
For those of you who may not know, Jen and Billy were actually the first responders who or who responded to Clary and actually saved her life. And that is how she is here today to share this story and to thank all of you in this room. So pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Our next guest speaker is actually Amber Hastings. She would also kind of like to share a little bit of her story with you and express her gratitude.
Good evening. My name is Amber, and I'm beyond grateful and humbled to be here. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your selfless service and dedication to our community. I've wondered countless times over the last 4 years if I'd ever be able to thank the EMS providers who saved my life on March 9, 2015. When I was made aware of tonight, I couldn't think of a more perfect setting. EMS providers turn people's fear into hope and alter the outcomes of the worst day of their lives. In this particular situation, Thomas Moore and Ginger Phippen, you two were the difference between life and death for me. Most people may have seen a lifeless junkie, someone who made a conscious choice to ruin her life. But the compassion and concern I heard that night told me you saw something different. I understand the frustration you all must feel when you're called back to the same residence, the same person, time and time again. I can imagine you feel as though what you're doing is probably pointless. But just on that one night, you changed the life of so many people. You gave my mother back her daughter, my children their mother. And I need to tell you that what you're doing each day is appreciated. It doesn't go unnoticed, and what you're doing is not in vain. Narcan gave me the opportunity to change the way that I was living. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't my first attempt at being clean. But without you two, I wouldn't be alive to attempt this one last time. And today I'm in my 4th year of recovery. I didn't just become abstinent. I'm changing and growing into the woman I was always supposed to be. I'm striving each day to do better, to be better than I was the day before, because I know that the same person will use again. I'm an active and productive member of the community. I work for a local addictions treatment provider, using what I've learned in my own personal recovery program to help others achieve recovery. I'm a part of multiple community efforts against the opioid epidemic, such as Overdose Awareness Day and Wicomico Goes Purple. I get my sense of purpose in giving back to the community in which I used and am recovering in. In addition to securing stable employment, I've been able to gain joint custody of my children and build and maintain a relationship with them. And if I've done nothing else, that would be reason enough to be grateful to you both. To the complete strangers who gave me another chance at life, thank you. I will never be able to truly express my gratitude, and I owe you my life.
This time, I'd like to invite Lori Brewster, our health officer, up to give us some closing remarks.
But anyway, I want to thank my partner in crime, the co-chair of the opioid intervention team, Dave Shipley. I do want to say thank you to both David Fitzgerald and Chrissy Bowie for organizing this event. I think it has been a long time coming. We really need to thank everyone for everything that you do each and every day. And I did want to say thank you to Executive Culver. He has been spot on from day one with this initiative and really wants to see big things happen in Wicomico County. So thank you. To our speakers, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think those stories and more mean a lot to the community as a whole, as well as to our first responders. I know that they mean a lot to me, and I want to personally thank our COAT team members who are here tonight as well. They work very tirelessly to reach out and make sure that individuals get the treatment that they need moving forward, and that's not easy these days, so thank you. This is just the beginning. We will have a follow-up session on compassion fatigue at some point, but I just want to say thank you all for coming, and thank you for the wonderful dinner. The Civic Center, the staff is gone. But hope you all enjoyed it, and thank you.